Welcome to Accessible Globe TV, where today we are about to start a series that was inspired by the University of Sydney. They did a series which was called Questions You Can't Ask or something like that. And we've decided to run our own series called Perspectives on Disability. This is a very, very exciting series for me because one of the things I've learned as I've dealt with people traveling, people with all kinds of different disabilities, that our answers to the same questions are often very, very different. So I'm really looking forward to doing this series. Today I'm talking to a gentleman called Charlie, and he has been with me in Thailand. We've done a little bit of work together, and Charlie Warner is his name. Had to remember his last name then. And sorry, Charlie. And he is a very, very interesting man. He was a rugby player, and he was destined to become an international rugby player when he received his disability. He's a great guy. He's done a lot in business, and I thought he'd be an interesting gentleman to start with. Here is Charlie and myself. If you woke up tomorrow, Charlie, without your disability, what would be the first things that you would want to do?
Wow. You'd probably go for a walk.
Yeah. Any particular place or any particular thing that would excite you in that?
Well, I'd want to see just how good these legs are, and how far they can take me, and how fast I can go, and yeah, it'd be a bit like getting a new car.
Speaking of a car, when you buy a wheelchair, is it like buying a car?
No.
What's the difference?
No, a wheelchair is predominantly, for me anyway, a tool. It's not an image thing or a leisure thing. It's a tool, so it's got to fit correctly. It's got to have utilitarian purpose. Whether it's heavy or light, or whether it can be disassembled and reassembled. These kind of things are really important. So, no, I'd think very carefully, and I did when I got my last chair. Made to measure, custom built, so that it actually does its job 100% correctly.
Okay. Do you prefer people to acknowledge or ignore your disability?
I don't care.
You don't care?
I don't care what other people think, and I don't care too much about what they say. My view is, providing I'm content and happy with myself, I don't really need to hear
No
other
validation
people's
needed.
opinions.
Yep.
I'm not talking about behaviour. I'm talking about my self-being. In that I'm not self-conscious. I don't
So
utilise it in any way.
if you were struggling with something, is it
Hmm.
okay for people to offer you help, and is there a particular way in which they should do it?
Absolutely, yes. I do appreciate people asking to help me. The majority of the times I tell them thank you, but it's not necessary. But I appreciate you trying to help. Um, I don't like being ignored. I fell over in Thailand, and some Chinese people actually stepped over me like I was a waste paper bag. That's not a nice feeling.
Is
So
there a
yeah,
way
I do
that...
appreciate.
Sorry, go ahead.
I do appreciate people making an effort to assist, because I know that can be quite difficult for them as well, and turning them down can be quite embarrassing for them. So it's a delicate thing, you know. You acknowledge and you appreciate what they're doing, and on occasions, yes, I need the help. On other occasions, I don't need the help, and I try to let them know that, you know, I'm okay and thank you very much.
In everyday events, are there things that you try to avoid doing in public? And I don't mean peeing behind a tree. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I would do that if I felt I needed to, and I have done. Um, that's a needs must situation, you know. In terms of my disability, do you mean that I'm shy
Like,
or?
I guess, is there anything that you'd feel self-conscious about that you might try to avoid doing?
Um, um, my physical ability has declined over the last 10 years. You know, with old age, I suppose, like an athlete or anybody else. You know, so there are certain things that I won't try to do now that I would have tried to do before, like walking in a crowd and things like that. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I do avoid certain situations because I don't want to put myself in any kind of jeopardy.
So does your disability ever make you feel self-conscious publicly?
Self-conscious isn't necessarily a bad thing, you know. You must know, Rodney, that just being good looking makes you self-conscious.
I wish I was, mate. I used to be once. Look, what about hanging out with other people with disabilities? Do you have a problem with it? Do you prefer to hang out with people with disabilities? Do you prefer not to? What's the story there?
I don't. I'm not. I'm not a member of a flock. No matter what the definition, you know, in terms of politics or the way I think, the things that I do. You know, I like to consider myself a wolf, not a sheep. So I'll go where my mood takes me, and if that means I'm alone or if I'm in a group, it matters not to me. I've had some great times, as you know, with you and the gang, um, you know, in a group of wheelchairs.
Yep.
Um, but it's not something I need or cling to
Yep.
or avoid. Don't want to be part of. You know, it doesn't make any difference to me, frankly.
It's interesting because some people avoid it and some people are happy with it, and of course I know you a little bit, but the viewers don't. So that's the purpose of the questions, I guess. What disability myths would you like to see busted?
Disability myths.
Yeah, what people think about people with disabilities that you would like to see busted, so people understood better.
Well, there's a. I may be wrong, but my personal view is that the general conception of disabled people is that they have a disadvantage, full stop. And that's not just a physical disadvantage, but maybe they're not bright, maybe they're not um, brave, maybe they're not intelligent, you know. There seems to be an initial negative association to disability, which I suppose on the one hand is correct in that I don't think anybody would choose to be disabled. But some of the most impressive people I've ever known have been disabled. When
So
I
perhaps
was a young man,
people should not think of us as handicapped.
no, I mean, your handicap is very specific. You know, your um, disadvantage. If you call it, instead of calling it disabled, call it disadvantaged. You know, I may not have any legs, but I've got a bank full of money. You know, I'm disabled, but I'm not really disadvantaged because I can buy my way out of my trouble to a certain extent. You know, you can overcompensate in one area for a particular area that you've maybe lost in some way. Um, yeah, so I think disability is such a blanket of a word. It covers so much. You know, deafness, blindness. You know, mental health, physical you know, disabilities. You know, such a broad spectrum. You know, it's difficult to categorise all those people with one word, really.
Yep.
And like I say, I remember as a young man in my very early 20s, I remember being um, interviewed by a guy on the phone, and then going to meet him, and he was sitting behind a desk, and he terrified me with his presence, you know, with his character, with his knowledge, you know, everything. You know, I found him a formidable person that I might be working for. And then when he stood up, he was in calipers, and he was a polio guy, you know, walked with
Polio victim,
crutches.
if you want to call it that or whatever. Yeah, polio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the initial impression that I got before I knew he was disabled was extremely powerful and strong,
So did that
and it didn't
change the way you
change.
perceived people with disability?
No, what it made me think is that I too could be as imposing as him.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, the
You were
legs had
already
nothing to do
disabled,
with
were
it.
you, at that point, Charlie? You already had your
Yeah, yeah,
disability?
yeah.
Okay.
I was walking on walking sticks. I couldn't walk very well, and he was the same as me pretty much. You know, in his physical ability.
Well, let
So
me tell you,
it gave
folks,
me a good.
Charlie can be pretty imposing, and he's been fairly imposing in business over the years. I know that, Charlie. So you managed to
Well, I
achieve what
think
he achieved.
I think he had a good deal to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I know you would have preferred not to become disabled, of course. Now, has your disability brought with you any knowledge or anything at all that has been empowering for you?
Um, in my self awareness, um, yes, because I think you can probably relate to the fact that there are times when your cup is half full and you see the world as quite a bleak place, and there are other times when you see the opposite. And I went through that, and I still do to a certain extent. But I found a strength that I don't think I would have found without my disability.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
you know, yeah.
Um, I'm just trying to think of some of the ways I want to put this. Because some of them I don't think really count for you. Have you ever tried to hide your disability? I don't think you have, really. Or what about in the very early stages?
Hide it. When it first happened to me, um, it was more like I felt more like, and I was treated like the walking wounded, And with all due respect to our armed forces, I don't ever want to compare myself to a war veteran that's been injured. But as a young man, as a teenager, I strutted around more like, I'd been smashed up, through no fault of my own, and I was a hero to face up to that. And my friends treated me like, a war hero, if you like, in that I'd been smashed and I'd overcome it. So um, I wore it as a badge of pride, I suppose. Look at me. You can't hold me down. No
You
matter what
can't
you do
stop
to
me.
me, I'll come. Exactly. So it was a badge of honour. Then I got to a stage in my life where I just never ever thought about it, to be honest with you, and just carried on regardless. And I think, that was a large proportion of my life, really. Never hid it. No, no.
I never like to focus on my disability, and unfortunately, this program makes me do that, which is kind of funny. But anyway, there you go. Do you mind when people ask you how you became disabled?
No, not at all. In fact, it's an intelligent question, isn't it?
Well, I think so, but some people don't like it. But
Well, if they
that's a
don't, then they're going to make their preconceptions, and that's the whole problem with the world at the moment. Everybody's so misinformed and got their own preconceptions about things. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's Putin going into the Ukraine. Get all the knowledge, get all the information, then you can make a rational and sensible decision about things. If you're dealing with a person that's disabled, you should know what happened to them and how they became the way they are, and then you can modify your behaviour accordingly.
okay. This is an interesting one for me because at first I thought absolutely not, but then I thought about it a bit deeper. Do you think your disability has become part of your identity?
Well, I think it's inevitable, isn't it? You can't, you can't not be disabled. You haven't got a choice. You don't. It's not a suit that you put on in the morning. Other people. I think there are three essential personalities. There's the way that you behave, the way that you put yourself out there. There's the way that you think you are when you actually start to think about yourself, the definition that you've got of yourself. And then there's the picture that other people see, their definition of you. They're three different people.
Yep.
So, you might well think people don't think of me as disabled when in actual fact they do. Or you may think of yourself as very disabled when in actual fact a lot of people don't see it at all, especially with mental health,
Yep. Do you find yourself ever wondering about other people's disabilities?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I would. I think when we met, I did ask, what was your condition? Yeah, I'm curious. I wouldn't invade on somebody's privacy. I mean, if I felt it wasn't the right time, or I didn't know them well enough, or it wasn't a comfortable question to be asking, then obviously I wouldn't do that. But if I was in a situation where it was relevant and then yeah, I would ask.
This is a question that I ask everyone, and it's probably a silly one to ask you because people don't know you were a promising rugby player and you probably were heading for a national for the national team. So you had a pretty bright future ahead of you. So this question, I'm guessing, would be a no-brainer for you, but I ask everybody, has your disability given more than it's taken away?
Whew. I think that's the hardest question of all. I mean, you can't answer that, can you? It's like, if I hadn't married my first wife, and I wish I hadn't, then I wouldn't have had 3 children with her, 3 children that I love dearly. So, it's the yin and yang, to get one, you've got to have the other. I don't know. I mean, maybe if I had become a professional rugby player, I could have broken my neck and died,
Well, you could have just become a stuck-up, arrogant prick.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So who knows? I mean, impossible to answer that question. I'm sorry. If you ask me would I take the choice, then of course I would choose not to have had my accident. I think that's
Yes.
a no-brainer.
Yep.
Whether or
It's
not that would have given me a better life than what I've got now, I don't know.
Okay. I guess, like have you ever been discriminated against when applying for a job?
Yeah.
Or do you feel that you have been? And can you give me perhaps
Yeah.
an example of that, if you can remember one?
Well, I think I was discriminated against when someone said I was too old for the job, and I think I was 35.
But that was that.
Maybe.
Do you think that was exacerbated by a disability?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was a young, up-and-coming London agency, and I was interviewed by somebody in their 20s, and for the job description, I had everything they needed, but I was not chosen, not because of my qualifications or my experience, but they literally said, I'm a bit old for what they want.
Good excuse, you reckon?
So I don't know if that yeah, possibly, yeah.
This is supposed to be all about you, but I will go on. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I don't consciously. I can't put my finger on a specific event where, I was discriminated against because I'm disabled. I think it's always been a bit more subtle than that, Doors just
Mine
didn't
wasn't.
open in the first
Mine
place.
wasn't very subtle. I was. I did radio school when I was younger, Charlie, and I was very proud that my first job that I was offered was in the biggest network at the time. Now, admittedly, it was the lowest station of the biggest network, but it was the network at the time, And I got the job, and I was told that any person who worked for the network had to go and meet the CEO, the managing director. And we had to go in there. So I got a train because I was out at Charleville in Western Queensland. I got a train into Brisbane, which is a long, long way. And I went into Mr. Alan Brandt's office, and they said, "Mr. Goss here to see you." And I wheeled in, and he said, "We don't hire to form people. Thank you very much." And that was the end of the end of the interview. I think I could count that as discrimination. Now you wouldn't get away with it, but back then you did. So there you go.
I had the opposite. I had the opposite to that. Must have been about 1977, something like that. I was going for my first proper job after my accident and after physiotherapy. I was on crutches, and I drove one of those little three-wheeler Invacar things, disabled thing. And I bought a suit, and I bought a cheap suit, so it was horrible. And I went to Foster Wheeler, which is a big mining and oil exploration company, and they had an office in Reading. And I marched in there with my long shoulder-length hair and my pinstripe suit and my platform shoes and my crutches, and I got to everybody entered the lift before me. As you're on crutches, you probably know, Rodney, sometimes you let the lively, excited people go in the lift first, and then as the last person, you enter the lift unhindered on your crutches. So I did.
And if they're very rude, you can trip them up on the way out. But anyway, go on.
Well, as I walked into the lift on my platform shoes, the lift floor was about a quarter of an inch above the ground, I think. Anyway, it was enough to trip me over, and I went head first into the lift, and my face went into the crotch of some man who caught me under the arms and then gradually lifted me back up to my feet so that I was at eye level with him. And I noticed the gold watch, the polished handmade leather shoes, the very well tailored suit, and then the grey curly hair and the suntan, which was quite rare in Reading, England in those days. And in an American accent, he said to me, "Are you okay, son?" I said, "Yeah, thanks for catching me." And he said, "You work here?" I said, "Not yet." He said, "Oh." I said, "I'm coming for my interview today." He said, "Ah." He said, "You'll be getting out on level 4, human resources or something." I said, "Yeah." So anyway, the lift door opened, and he stepped out the lift with me, and the human resources manager was waiting to greet me. And we'd had a conversation in the lift, you know, and he knew my name. And he said to this guy, "This is Roger, and he's come for a job. Look after him." And he put his hand on me and said, "I hope see you again soon, Roger."
That's
And
fantastic.
went off his way. Yeah. So I think that was a definite case of positive discrimination, where he pretty much said to this guy, give the boy the job, you know.
Excellent. Well, I've got two more questions. Have you ever avoided anyone with a disability, and why? And I don't count.
Avoided one. Well, I think I'd have to say no, because I wouldn't. I wouldn't avoid them because of their disability. I mean, I could name one person that you know that I avoided because I didn't like him, but it had nothing to do with his disability.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't avoid someone based on their. No, it's about character and.
What about their
humanity
attitude to their disability? Have you avoided people because of their attitude to their disability?
Well, that's a good question.
Because I have.
I tend to avoid people that feel sorry for themselves, full stop, whether they're disabled or, you know, whether they're perfectly able-bodied. You know, my life's philosophy has always been the glass is half full. You know, your life is what you make of it, and I get very disappointed when I see friends, family that take a very negative view of their situation, when in fact it's not that bad, you know. And I suppose, yeah, there are some disabled people like that. Some of them seem to have a chip on their shoulder, like they're angry at everybody or something. I would avoid them probably, but it's not.
Okay.
It's not because of their disabilities specifically. It's because of their
More
attitude.
about their attitude. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the last one. If there's one thing you could change to make the world more ideal for people with disabilities, what would it be?
I would wave a magic wand, and I would give everybody a 7-day vacation as a disabled person. Yeah. Make them disabled for a week.
So really it's all about understanding and knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, one thing they did, for example, when I was at physiotherapy, and they got one of the guys who was able-bodied, and they put a backpack on him with like 30 kilos, and then they put about 15 kilos of sandbags on his feet, and they made him try and keep up with me. And he couldn't.
Wow, he couldn't. So you would make everybody in the world disabled for a short time.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
I don't mean that in an aggressive way. I mean it would be like
an educational way.
You know. Yeah, you know, if I could wave a magic wand and turn a certain person into me for a week, that would change their view on life forever.
Now, just one thing that you've made me want to ask. Let's say we could do that, but we all were affected. Even, do you think you and I should experience somebody else's different disability? Would that be worth it as well?
No, I think you should experience being Carl, for example.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We should. Oh, okay, fair enough. But Carl is disabled.
You should experience the opposite. Well, that's.
We're talking about my producer, folks. That's all right. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm just being silly. Yeah. You're right there, Carl.
He's a big, strong man with a bad back. I accept that, and I don't want to reduce that in any way. I know it's very painful for him.
Yeah,
but it's not what you've got. And if you were allowed, to be Keanu Reeves for a week, that might do you some good.
Probably would. Charlie, thank you very much I know that you have been incredibly open and honest. You're the first person we've done in this, what I hope will be a series of people with different disabilities and different ages. You don't know how much I appreciate it. Thanks very much, mate, for being number one.
Okay, well, I hope I haven't ruffled any feathers, and I don't want to get into trouble, but free speech, isn't it, really?
Well, it's all about, it's interesting for me to hear different people's that think differently to me. It makes me think. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay,
see you, mate.
Thank you, Rod. Bye.
Bye. Well, I really enjoyed that, and I hope you did too. I think that Charlie was magnificent in his honesty and in the way that he thought about the questions, and it's made me really excited to do more in this series. I really think it's something that I'm excited about, and that's a great thing. So thank you very much, Charlie. Let's just thank some of the people that have helped our program. Here they are. We've got Totally Mobile that sells wheelchairs and scooters and all kinds of mobility aids and disability medical equipment and stuff in Hervey Bay. Hello World Travel in Hervey Bay. We're looked after in Hervey Bay. Simple Solutions, who are our just great friends, and they do training in National Disability Insurance Scheme, and they offer services as well. IOMI, that make houses automatic for people with disability, and of course the National Disability Insurance Scheme from the Australian Government that has helped my life become much easier and helped me bring these programs. Please don't forget to subscribe. We really need you to subscribe to our channel because it helps us a lot. And we will be adding our Patreon channel fairly soon, and there'll be extra stuff on that if you're interested, and we'll enjoy bringing that to you as well. Thank you for watching our very first program in, what did we call it? I thought of the name at the beginning, but what was it, Carl? Perspectives, that's the word I couldn't think of. Perspectives on disability, and we look forward to bringing you people across the whole spectrum of disabilities and listening to how they view life, themselves, and other people. See you soon on Accessible Globe TV.